Hi, everyone. I'm Leela here, and I'm privileged to be your Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism, and the Status of Women. And I was so happy. Earlier this week, I was able to declare Alberta's third annual book day. Alberta's publishing industry, and by extension, our authors, are just playing an incredible role in helping keep our province's culture alive, especially right now with COVID. My goodness. And I don't know if folks know this, but publishing is one of Alberta's most important cultural industries and a really important contributor to our economy. And like I was saying earlier, I just don't think that there's been a better time to embrace reading and explore some of our province's authors. I know that I have. And it's always been said, when you open up a new book, you open up a new world. So while much of our world is inaccessible because of COVID, books give us that escape and provide us with the ability to really expand our imaginations and hopefully remove us for a little bit from our troubles and allow us to immerse ourselves in characters and places. I have to say I've been very immersed in this particular character with the author that we're speaking to today. Very interesting. I have so many questions. But if you're looking for a local literary flavor, you know, Alberta's had an incredible amount of talented authors from which we can choose. And I'm just going to give you a few to choose from, but we have Edmonton's own Todd Babiak, Calgary's Anne Logan, Marina Endicott, Rosemary Nixon, Robin Van Eck, Ken Hunt, and Ron Wood. And these are just to name a few. And I'm sure Matt will be able to chime in a little bit later with some others. But also, remember we also have the late W.O. Mitchell. And if you get a chance to go out to the High River area and go and visit the museum out there, there's a beautiful heritage spot out there where you can learn everything you want to about W.O. Mitchell. It's just fantastic. But enough with me talking. We are here with an incredibly talented Alberta writer, Dr. Heidi Jacobs. Heidi was born and raised in Edmonton. She's a graduate of the University of Alberta, where she obtained her bachelor's, master's, and PhD in English before leaving Alberta to attend the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where she received her master's in library and information science. And now she is a librarian at the University of Windsor, an incredibly accomplished author. In fact, her first book, Molly of the Mall, which I happen to have right here, and it's awesome and funny. Literary Lass and Purveyor of Fine Footwear. My friend, you couldn't have done better for me. I love reading about shoes. Won this year's Stephen Leacock Memorial Medal for Humor. Where would our authors be, though, without our wonderful publishers? So I'm also pleased to be joined today by a very good friend of mine, Matt Bose, General Manager of New West Press and publisher of Molly of the Mall. And honestly, the last time, Matt, you and I saw each other was when we had the book sale, I think at the legislature, right?
I think we saw each other at Taj Express too.
Oh, right, briefly. That's right. I forgot about that. Amazing. And I miss seeing you in person, and I'm a big hugger, so I'm sending you big virtual hugs. But I just want to thank you so much for both of you joining us today. I've really enjoyed. I've actually highlighted certain things from your book, Dr. Jacobs, that I just love. And I mean, I've loved reading since I was a little girl. These days, I mostly read briefings. So when I get a chance to peruse through, and Matt, thank you so much for sending me so much of this incredible, you fill up my coffers all the time with wonderful literature. I appreciate that so much. And so Heidi, I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously this has been a lifelong thing for you. And I was reading, I think it's, I'm not sure, it's in your book. You actually talk about Molly, and you talk about Norton anthologies, which any of us who took English at university, it's the first thing that popped to mind. So I was wondering, like, with your history and like, what really inspired your love of literature? I mean, you've done every piece of education possible in that. What started you off on that journey?
Oh, well, I have to thank my family, of course. My parents are huge book people. They read to me from probably the first day I was born, and there's just books everywhere. And I think I liked what you were saying at the very beginning about opening a book and opening a different world. And I think my family was very much about using books to explore the world, and also exploring the world too. But I think that's really where it came from, and then it's just sort of grown ever since.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's clearly something that you're passionate about, and considering your incredible academic achievements. And so, did you? I mean, obviously, you were inspired by the environment you grew up in. Did you think that you would end up in this place? I mean, you have a PhD in English, graduate degree in library science, penning award-winning books, and so is this sort of where you saw your trajectory of your life? Like when you were a little girl, were you hoping to become a writer? Or?
No, probably not. I don't know. I think I probably want to be a veterinarian, or I don't know.
Me too.
You know, like, I don't know, cat something or another. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's surprising where things go. And I think Molly took me so long to write, in part because I was doing other things, and I was doing it on evenings and weekends and various things. So it was something that, you know, I kept keeping up on the side and doing little notes here and there. So it was just a labor of love over time. So I was really, really thrilled when New West said, yeah, we'll take it. So it was a long haul, but I'm very, very happy where it ended up. It's
so cute. I have a picture of cute Angus in my mind. I just, one of these days, I don't know how to draw pictures, but I'd love to see what you picture this as. But I mean, let's go back over. I have to say this. I mean, as winner of this year's Leacock Award, you've entered a really super prestigious club. So congratulations on the award.
Thank you.
You're with Pierre Bertin, W. Mitchell, Stuart McLean, Will Ferguson, Mordecai Wickler, Raj Carrier, W.P. Kinsella. I mean, all of these people have been given this medal, some more than once. I mean, how did you feel when you got the award? I mean, that's amazing. What were your emotions? How did you feel?
Oh, I was really glad. Actually, the only good thing about COVID is that I could hear the news that I got it at home, and I just went, oh no, because it was supposed to be like a public event. So I was really kind of relieved that I could just, yeah, I was really, really, really stunned. And yeah, I think I started to cry. You know, my mom was a huge part of this book, and she would have just been really, really thrilled. So we lost her almost 2 years ago this week. So yeah, it was sort of this lovely moment for her and for my family. And it just really seemed like a group effort. And of course, New West was a huge part of this. So like I always say, my name was on the cover, but it was not just me. It was a whole team of people. So it was really, I was really thrilled that it could do that for the team.
Wow,
Team Molly. Yeah.
That must make you feel really spectacular. I mean, this is quite the story, and to know that you've participated in bringing this journey full circle, like that's incredible as a publisher, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're talking about the club of authors she's joined by winning the Leacock Award. What you didn't mention, though, is that she's I believe the ninth woman since the 40s, since this award has been around, that's ever won it. And we've actually published 2 of those 9 women. So I'm very pleased by New West being able to bring Western Canadian prairie voices to the rest of the country, and for people to see that, like, we're really funny out here. It's not just cold. There's like, you know, we got good jokes as well.
And lots of jokes about cold too.
Oh yeah, obviously, yeah.
Oh yeah, there's lots of jokes to be made about cold and snow for sure. Well, do you mind if we talk a little bit about your book, Heidi? Like I wanted to read this one part because this is my favorite. And it's funny because probably because of my background and coming from sort of conservative roots, I thought to myself, oh, that is exactly the boy I would be attracted to, but I'm going to read this and then you'll know which part I'm at.
Okay.
So, sometimes when I should be paying attention in my gender and courtship in a long 19th century class, I work my way across each row of students and ponder each male classmate. I wonder, could I love him? Could he be the Mr. Darcy to my Elizabeth Bennet, the Will Laidslaw to my Dorothea? And more often than not, it's a no or a maybe. Every once in a while, there's a hint of perhaps, but then I worry, what if he likes classic rock? It's my kind of guy. Or is a member of the Young Conservatives? Or worse still, what if he eats veal without guilt? Or doesn't use a refillable travel mug? And then my worrying makes me worry, am I too hard on mankind? And then every once in a while, I see someone and think, could he be the one? And more often than not, the person I think about is cute Angus, until he did something quite despicable. This was my favorite part. I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, That's exactly what the other than the fact that I'm a vegetarian, I'm with you on the veal thing. But I thought that was brilliant, and it just paints this incredible picture. And it seems to me that there's obviously, you were saying there's a lot of contributors to creating Molly, right? But you must share a few things in common. I mean, obviously both went to Edmonton, went to university, both worked in retail. So can you tell us, is Molly an alter ego? Is she part of you? Like, how did she get created? Because she's just hilarious.
Well, she's, I was fortunate enough to have time to make her a lot smarter than I would have been, because I could look stuff up and get her to say various things. So that was really good. So,
I love that.
But there's a lot of stuff that, people always ask. I mean, the real question was like, well, who is this character and who is that person? And is that this professor? And like, no, they're not. There's not a direct relationship. I think everybody's kind of. I've been around English departments my whole adult life, and so I think everything's kind of a bit of a, amalgamation of types. And you'll find a lot of these people in every English department everywhere. So there's no direct correlation. But I think she's a bit, probably. She's a little bit me, people say. She's a lot of my mom, who I think is the funniest human being I've ever known. So I think, I channeled my mom a lot. So like, what would she see in this situation? And so it's some of that. And
she'd probably be so, so proud of this. There's another part on page 133 here that when you're talking about Marvin Gaye's things, what's going on, but my other favorite part is that you say here, it is taking all I can muster to stay awake in class. Last week, I tried to waylay my boredom by drawing a cartoon character I invented, Hegemony Cricket. I stifled my laughter when I gave him a Byron Keats turtleneck. And tea came sputtering out of my nose and made me laugh even more. And I had to dash from class to regain my composure. I just totally it made me howl. I was just crying when I was reading this. So it was really, so. I'm preparing to speak with you about this. Actually, I was a little bit nervous because, this is your life's work and such an incredible work. And you want to do it justice when you're reading and interpreting as well too. But I understand that you had a brief brush with Alice Cooper one time.
Oh,
that must have been interesting.
It was really brief. And the funniest part of that Alice Cooper thing is I was talking to someone else who my brother worked with in Milwaukee. Like, this whole bizarre thing. So we were in Milwaukee talking to this guy. He worked at a store, and he said, Alice Cooper came in my store too. He worked in a Western wear store. So somehow this guy I met in Milwaukee was working at Western Mall the same day that Alice Cooper was there too. And so there was this bizarre moment. So, or Alice Cooper goes to Western Mall a lot. I don't know, but
anything is possible. I remember the Backstreet Boys came running through the mall where I was working at one time. Girls behind them. But there's I don't want to ruin anything for anybody who's going to read the book, but Molly has an encounter that's pretty exciting as well too. Did you want to talk at all about that, or
which one is that?
Yeah, I'll write it down and I'll send it to you in the text, because I don't want to give it away in the book, but I'll send it to you.
Okay.
I have so much stuff to draw on from the book. I'll send it to you, because anybody's watching this, read the book. Okay. So good. Matt, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit as well too. So I know when you and I spoke, I think it was the first time that we met, we were chatting about Bollywood extensively. You and I both have a tremendous love. I think you know way more about it than even I do. I try to learn the songs. I'll sing you one of the songs one day. But you're also an avid reader. And how did your love of books begin?
I mean, it's probably a similar story to both you and Heidi. I just feel like I grew up in the country. I mean, Heidi didn't grow up in the country, but I grew up in the country, and really reading a book was the cheapest way to get out of the country, at least for a couple hours, right? Like I could imagine what it was like in some far off land and having an adventure. But something that I really like about Molly is that right now it's an adventure in a place I went to 100 times. Like I miss West Edmonton Mall so much. I can't wait to go back there when it's a bit safer. But it's it's kind of fun to fantasize about something that I know so well. Like Heidi did such a good job of reminding us like where the flamingos were, and the
Yeah.
different sort of like those weird contraptions with the balls sometimes. Like I think that it did such a good job of evoking that for me that I'm back there every time I read it. But yeah, I just read all the time. My parents and I read. It was often in the evening we would all just be sitting and reading our own books, which seems kind of weird that everyone's being quiet, but we're also just doing the thing we want to do the most. So yeah, and really it's the only thing I'm good at is reading books. So luckily I found a job that lets me do it all day.
Well, and also picking some incredible books as well, too, obviously. I mean, it takes a very special eye and understanding and being able to interpret and find out how it is that we carry, because you're helping Heidi to carry a story onto an entire generation of people. It takes a very special mind, I think, to work in that, and especially to be able to read so many stories and to be able to help bring those to life for those of us. I mean, I'm super grateful, that's for sure. And I imagine, like you were saying about Heidi being one of 9 ever to receive this distinguished award. So that's quite a feather in your cap. And so what drew you to Heidi's work?
Well, I think this is kind of the use of an Alberta publisher, because we inherently understand West Edmonton Mall. We get the weirdness.
Yeah.
And I worked in a mall. It sounds like both of you have worked in a mall. So
Yeah.
it is it's an experience that is pretty universal, actually. A lot of people worked in malls, but in order to, you need a local Alberta publisher to actually get West Edmonton Mall, because that was such a big part of my childhood, because I would be so excited. We get to go to West Edmonton Mall. It was the biggest thing every 2 months or so. Like, oh, so exciting. And the fact that Heidi got that so well, an Alberta publisher needed to be the one to do this, because Toronto, they call it the West Edmonton Mall first. They don't know how to say it. Plus, they just think, oh, it's a big mall somewhere. But no, that was like the epicenter of our social lives for a lot of the time, and just a super important part of our community, even if it is a mall. I mean, it's the intersection of commerce and culture. We just all like going there, and she did such a good job of evoking that, and the 90s, like the music references, and
the music references are amazing.
Yeah. It's like I'm there again, and especially Molly's clothes. Heidi's done a great job of just remembering, or casting her mind back to the way a girl in university, like in her first year of university, she would be dressing like this. She would be thinking about Ewan McGregor. I mean, you guys are all into Cute Angus, but I was pulling for Penguin Man for the most of it. I dug his whole thing, but it really just evoked that so well that we thought, okay, we got to do this. This is a purely Edmonton story, an Alberta story. And if we don't do it, no one is going to, because no one else is going to get it as well as we did. So it was like a real meeting of the minds for us.
When like talking about Eraserhead, and like where I was going with that earlier comment was sort of Molly's, her some of the drugs and things that were around at that time, and the impact that had on their world. And it's interesting too, because my grandma lived just down from in Meadowlark area. So we would do West Edmonton. Do you remember? I don't know if you guys were around for this, but they had the grand opening of the big chandelier when it first opened.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and I remember going to see the chandelier, going, that's and learning the name of the Gramesians, right? Like it all, right? And you would go to like Florida, and people would ask you where you're from, and you would say, well, the Olympics and West Edmonton Mall. They're like, West Edmonton Mall, that's where you live. Like, it was crazy. Mm-hmm. It is, you're right, Matt, it's a complete culture. And I don't know, like the water park was like magic. Mm-hmm. It was like it still is. I know it is. It was just magic. And do you remember they did that entire documentary on the fellows who did the waves and the new technology, and how they recycled waves through, and the depth, and it was a really big deal. Anyway, I could talk about this. So New West, I mean, you guys have been around for what, 40 years, right? As a publishing.
About that, yeah, 42 next year, yeah.
And you're independent, and obviously largely focused on Western Canadian authors. So would you mind just sharing like you talked a little bit about really bringing the prairies to the world, and that we're all so funny out here, and that, but if you could just talk a little bit, both as a publisher and as a writer yourself, where do you get your inspiration and how are you pushing that forward? Because this is really important. I'm not going to ask you why it's important. That's obvious, but like, how are you creating, you know, the environment and the education and shifting the discussion and the culture so that we're able to really bring these stories to life?
I mean, it kind of just comes to a mentality of, I think we're important, you know? People need to hear about Edmonton. They need to hear about Calgary. They need to hear about Nanton, Alberta, where Chorus of Mushrooms takes place. And this is the German edition of Chorus of Mushrooms. So German people are going to learn about Alberta now because we sold the rights. Like, I think that we are a legitimately important place in the world, and people need to know about it. Is it egotistical? Maybe, but also, you know, it's so important to our culture that Alberta stories get told, right? Because if we don't do them, if we don't tell these stories, no one else is going to do it. No one from Toronto is going to come and say, "Oh yeah, Alberta, this seems great. I'm going to devote my life to this." No, Alberta has to do it ourselves. We're a culture of, you know, entrepreneurs, independence, and we do things ourselves. I think that's kind of the backbone behind New West. Is they just thought, we can't let literary culture be focused in Quebec and Ontario. We got it. We have it here too. We just need to get it out to the world, and I think it's working.
I would agree. We're doers, right? We're resilient. It's an incredible, there's so many incredible stories here. And then drawing back to Alberta Book Day and reading for a second, I was delighted to take part in my first book day last year. I was so inspired by the talent of our local authors and the dedication of the province's publishing industry to develop and promote our homegrown literary talents such as yourself. And so, Heidi, would you mind providing any wisdom or, you know, ideas that you could present to other authors that are trying to get their work out there, and what you would like to even share with maybe some of our young readers?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think the story of me writing Molly is just a story of persistence, and putting in the time. And my mom always used to say, you know, I'd come home and I would tell her stories about, I don't know what, at university or various things. She's like, "Oh, write it down, Heidi, write it down." And I probably didn't write down as much, but over time I have sort of written little things down. And so you never know when you're going to see something, some weird little detail. All sorts of weird little details from Molly came from things that I just happened to notice and remembered. So looking around, writing stuff down, and I think believing in your character and the importance of stories is really important. And I think actually when you two were talking about the importance of Alberta publishing and Alberta stories, I think, you know, my dad talks about reading W.O. Mitchell for the first time and just being blown away that here's literature about where he lived in Saskatchewan, and how powerful it is to read stories about where you're from. And I think that's a kind of a, you know, if there's a theme of Molly, that's certainly a thing that, you know, literature happens wherever you are. Stories are wherever you are. You don't have to live in a big city. You don't have to live in Ontario to write Canadian literature. It's everywhere. And I think that's a really important thing, to value your story and value the stories that your families tell you and that you see around you. And I think that would be my thing about, you know, you don't have to live this amazing life that Molly's always thinking, "Oh, if only I lived in London and I could hang out with the Gallagher brothers, then I would be literary and cool." Like, no, you know what? You can write a book about working in a shoe store, and it will get published. So I think that would be my one bit of advice.
Or being Canada's top purveyor of polishes and protective spray.
You know, dream big, really, right? Like, you too can be Canada's top purveyor of polishes and protective sprays. Yeah.
You have like on like a, I don't know, we need to get, like, it's hysterical. You just said, I mean, the humor in this. I pull also, I have so much stuff that is highlighted. It's just, you know, makes me so happy. So, well, Matt, okay, we're gonna end with you, my friend, in terms of what do you want to say to not young publishers, new publishers? How do we get them out? What do we do?
How do we get new publishing going here? I think it is like Heidi said, realizing that stories here are valid and authors here are bringing interesting life experiences. You know, we've read about London and New York so many times over the years. You know, I'm kind of sick of it. I don't need to hear more about it. Especially right now, reading about London and New York is as much of a fantasy as leaving my house some days. So, you know, I think it's important to memorialize, maybe not memorialize, but kind of glorify the places you live so that you can realize that you live in a literary culture yourself. But for young publishers, I think right now, the best thing to do is to keep your ear to the ground, attend readings, read every literary magazine you could find, and find those people telling stories that can only exist where you are, that can only exist here. Because again, you can't wait for London and New York to tell you what's important about where you live. You have to tell them what's important about where you live, because they're not going to do it for you.
That is brilliant advice on all levels, my friend. You are a philosopher king, and it's not egotistical at all. This is somebody who loves their province, and you are showing your love of your province in a lot of different ways. I'm so grateful, actually. I love your language and the way and the passion with which you speak. So I think it's brilliant. We could certainly use a lot more of that. Well, I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to join me today. It's such a pleasure. And like I said, I'm always a little Twitter-pated to meet authors, because I love reading so much. And so to be able to meet you, Heidi, and meet the person who brought Molly to life, I'm very grateful for your time. And Matt, just keep up the tremendous work, my friend. It's a good fight that we're in here to keep this going. And I hope that you get to speak a lot more about your passion about Alberta. We need more people speaking like that with the passion.
I want to see your manuscript. You got to write me something now.
Yeah, pardon me?
I want to see your manuscript. You got to write me something now.
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, you.
And but I think that just being able to share these wonderfully creative gifts, like these are gifts. And I hope that one of the things is that I think reading is quite often used as a punishment or a penalty for people. And we have to uplift that poetry and reading is a gift. It's a story, it's a escape, it's whatever it is, or if you like realism and biographies or whatever it is, but you know, really, really, really pushing the importance of that piece of it. And I would like to thank everyone who's watching today in honor of Alberta Book Day. Please, 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 I encourage you to check out Book Publishers of Alberta's eBooks project. So this is really cool. You can virtually check out and read Alberta books from your local library. You do not need to access this collection on your library card. You can read them online or download many of the titles to read offline. Some are available in audio format. Heidi, one day this book has to be an audio format.
It is an audiobook.
Yeah.
It is an audio. How did I
Yep.
not? Okay, well, never mind.
Yep.
Okay, that makes me happy. I'm going to get it because I want to hear somebody else speak the language. And you can find a link to this terrific project in the video description. With the holidays coming up, please put books into stockings. Put these books into stockings. Tell the Alberta stories. Learn and listen and fantasize and understand that this incredible world that we live in is ours for the taking, and get these great interpretations of the world that we live in. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much, Heidi, and thank you, Matt. Very, very appreciative.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. It was really exciting to be here.
Yes, thank you, Minister Aheer. It was wonderful.
Take care, you guys.